Re-Zero, Arc 9, Chapter 9, High Efficiency Sorcerous Induction Door.
I am glad you have returned safely. Relief. With few words, Klein expressed that he was pleased to see Subaru return. Since being made Emilia's knight, Subaru had put in great efforts to live up to his title, and this man had taught him how to train his body and handle a whip, as well as many things that had led to his current confidence. He could be said to be Subaru's true teacher in this world. Despite his position, he had always maintained a certain distance with the people of the mansion he served, even with Subaru, but when he spoke of their reunion, he touched his shoulder and seemed to have a slight smile on his face, which was quite impactful. At the same time, Subaru was also worried about Klein, who seemed unfazed by anything. Subaru, of course that's only natural. Or I guess I should say, I'm really sorry. Klein-san, I heard you were a huge help to Emilia-tan and the others when they came to get me. Klein, no, I only did what was possible within my abilities. I have received a fair amount of compensation, so there were few issues. Acceptable. Subaru, Klein-san. Klein, moreover, does an apology in such a situation not differ from the policy of the camp? Subaru, huh? Klein, if it were Emilia Summer, who you look up to as your master, who is developing with purity and bravery while still retaining her childlike nature, what would she say at a time like this? Contemplation. At Klein's words, Subaru took a small breath. His evaluation of Emilia was permeated with his partiality towards children who overflowed with infinite potential, but Subaru understood what he was trying to say. In a situation like this, instead of apologizing for having something done for her, Emilia would say, Subaru, not sorry, but thank you. Klein, indeed. Excellent answer. The fact that he answered with a straight face without smiling was very Klein-like. Subaru scratched his cheek with his finger and smiled wryly at his teacher's unreadable feelings. This elusive quality of his probably contributed to the hardships of Arnrose, Klein's lady, and the complicated feelings of Frederica, who he had known for many years. But then again, given that Frederica talked about Klein far too often for someone who supposedly disliked him, her complex inner feelings did not seem like something for an outsider to comment on. Klein, speaking of which, it was said in the preceding bird mail that Frederica would also be accompanying you, but I have yet to locate her tall, conspicuous figure. Verification. Subaru, Ah, that's right. Frederica was supposed to come along at first, but she changed her plans at the last minute and went together with Roswaal instead. Subaru answered Klein's question, keeping an eye on the distant sky. At present, the Emilia camp, including Subaru's current party, was divided into groups to carry out different tasks throughout the kingdom of Lagunica. Emilia and Otto headed to the royal capital to report on the events in the empire. Ram was looking after Rem, who was resting at the mansion to recover her memories, and Roswaal and Frederica had headed to the south of the kingdom to the Bariel domain. With the death of Priscilla, and with her husband Light Bariel having passed away a while ago, the Bariel domain was bereaved of its lord, extolled as the Sun Princess, and great disorder was to be expected. With the aim of minimizing such tumult, Roswaal accompanied Schult, who had chosen to return straight to the Priscilla camp, and Frederica had also gone along with them. Frederica is good with children and is liked by Schult, so she can be trusted to take care of things, I suppose. Just thinking about Roswaal going there on his own is enough to make a person shudder. In fact, Subaru, I get what you mean, but don't go around saying that too much. Roswaal has mellowed a lot. Even this time, Emilia-tan asked for his help with Schult, and he accepted in no time. As always, Beatrice's harsh words for Roswaal were quite endearing, but Subaru was very grateful for how he had handled the situation this time. Emilia, who had apparently spoken with Schult while Subaru engaged in Sparker, also seemed relieved that Roswaal had taken care of the situation. To be perfectly honest, Subaru could not help but wonder if Roswaal was only willing to help out with the situation of another camp without any hesitation because he wanted to have influence over the Bariel domain. Even if that were the case, he thought Roswaal was more trustworthy than other people who harbored ambition. That was the conclusion Subaru came to for the time being. To begin with, if it was a matter of getting involved in the affairs of other camps, Subaru had already been sticking his nose in much more boldly than Emilia or Roswaal. While thinking this, Subaru expressed another complex feeling of gratitude to Roswaal that when Subaru failed to save Priscilla, Roswaal had not followed through on his past declaration. Subaru's return by death. Even though Roswaal was unaware that death was the impetus, he recognized that Subaru had the authority to redo things, and after the battle in the sanctuary, he clearly declared that he would not allow Natsuki Subaru to take a path of compromise when it came to the loss of those around him. Roswaal had said that if Subaru ever failed to save someone important to him, he would incinerate everything in an inferno of his flames, forcing Subaru to reset that world. That was no empty threat or joke, but a genuine declaration. However, Roswaal did not attempt to make that terrifying scene of flames a reality on this occasion, as if to add insult to injury after Subaru's failure to save Priscilla. Whether this signified some kind of change in Roswaal, or whether he did not count Priscilla among the people for whom Subaru would reset, he did not know. Albeit, he really hoped that it was the former. Subaru, well, that's why Frederica is with Roswaal. If you want to see her, Klein-san, you can just hop over there. Klein, unfortunately, my method of transportation is not all-powerful. Conditional. In addition, concerning the matter of going out of my way just because of wanting to see Frederica. Denial. However, Klein, I was merely concerned about the fact that things are not going according to the original plan. Trivial. Klein added this after briefly shaking his head, making Subaru raise his eyebrows. Although Klein's point of view was understandable, things did not always go according to plan. Not to say that one should be overly flexible, but being too rigid could cause one to be unable to do anything. First of all, if it had not been Frederica, it would have been Petra who accompanied Roswaal. Internally, within the camp, that would have been a much more concerning situation. That was why this combination of personnel came about naturally. Klein, Subaru, Klein-san, Klein. Apologies for always beating around the bush. Acknowledgement. Considering my position, my remark was out of line. Concern. Klein bowed his head as he said this, and Subaru thought his attitude of drawing a line between himself and others like that was lonely. Originally, he was a person who knew how to distinguish between his own and other people's areas of responsibility, but, Subaru, I'm not Roswaal or Arnrose, so I don't think there's anything like being out of line with me. You should know, Klein-san, that you're one of us. There was a reason why he had thanked him earlier. If someone went to such lengths in order to help you out, then what were they if not a comrade? Subaru, Klein-san, you and I are both on the side of the brave and cute Emilia Tan, yeah, Klein. Yes, indeed. Affirmation. However, unlike you, Subaru-sama, who is expected to grow up quickly, I am in a position where I want to watch over the budding potential and growth. Cradle, Subaru, I feel the divide between incompatible factions who support the same idol. Beatrice, incidentally, Betty's position is that Emilia's growth would make Bubby proud, I suppose. Even within the camp, it was clear that there were big differences in the way that Emilia was being supported, but Beatrice's opinion was the most mature. Anyway, it was a great help that Klein could travel the long distance in one go with Meili, who was essential for surmounting the Augria sand dunes. Subaru, what will you do after this, Klein-san? Klein, although it concerns my lady's life, I have been unable to concentrate on my duties as a butler for some time. Introspection. When the Master and Emilia Summer return, things will likely get busy again. Therefore, I intended to leave you all in Frederica's care and turn back. Contemplation. Narrowing his eyes, a look of worry was visible through Klein's monocle. It was clear that his contemplation was centered around his lady, Arnrose. Albeit young, Arnrose already possessed the spirit of a first-class noble, and while she was dependable, she was also somewhat at risk. As her closest retainer, Klein must have felt uneasy about leaving her side for long periods of time. That was why, Subaru, it's all right, Klein-san. Garfield's here too. Petra's also becoming more and more reliable. Go back and grant some peace of mind to Arnrose. After that scene, Subaru and his group set out to conquer the Augria sand dunes with Meili in tow, and although they had succeeded splendidly, seriously now, My amazing self didn't get any damn opportunity to shine. Well, since we just parted from Klein-san telling him that everything would be okay, if any problem arose then it'd have been hard on him. I say it's good that nothing happened. I get it, you know? I really do get it, you know? But still, what about my amazing self's feelings after getting all fired up for this? Crestfallen, Garfield stood with his head hung low before the main entrance to the Pleiades watchtower. Within the blowing sand wind, Garfield was hunched over looking dejected, and Meili, who was the greatest contributor to overcoming the sand sea, crossed her arms and puffed out her cheeks. Meili, wh. It's not as if it's my foul LT. If the fanged Onii-san wants to show off his strength so badly, how about making a round trip across the sandpit by himself? Petra, Meili-chan, don't provoke him like that. Sorry, Garf-san. Meili-chan didn't speak out of malice. She just doesn't know when to keep her mouth shut. Meili, Petra-chan is quite RSH. Meili, who had taken offense, reluctantly withdrew due to the mediation from Petra. The exchange at the bar in Mirala was not the only reason, rather, in the power balance between these two, Petra was for some reason overwhelmingly superior, which made for an intriguing friendship. Subaru, as I thought, is this because of the power dynamic between the one who feeds and the one being fed? Beatrice, it is doubtful if that is the case, in fact. Finding someone who can match Petra in the mansion is rare, I suppose. Only Emilia and Ram, in fact. Subaru, Emilia Tan is naturally strong, and Ram is just strong, plain and simple. Subaru nodded at the interjection from Beatrice, agreeing with her point. Needless to say, neither Subaru nor Beatrice would ever be caught claiming that they could beat Petra. They knew exactly where they stood. How admirable. Subaru, then again, coming back here once again, something is slowly welling up within me. Within the heart of Subaru, who had spoken thus, a dull throbbing ache began to form at the sight of the majestic tower before him. It was the place from which he had been sent away to the Wallachian Empire, and although so much had happened since then, it was also the place that had fortuitously brought Spiker to him. However, what made Subaru's heart ache the most at this moment was she whom he had lost. Subaru, Shaola. The first person whom Natsuki Subaru, who possessed return by death, was unable to save. Priscilla had been added to that, and even though Subaru's mind ought to have been cognizant of the fact that return by death was not omnipotent, he was forced to realize the same with the very depths of his soul. That was why, such thoughts, such wounds, he wished to never have to experience them again. Beatrice, however, it is truly a relief, I suppose. After all, having to go through all that hassle just to get to the tower is undesirable. In fact, perhaps understanding Subaru's innermost thoughts through their linked hands, Beatrice chose not to touch upon Subaru's sentiments, and Subaru also nodded back with a yes. The Pleiades watchtower itself was visible at a distance even from Mirala. Compared to before, the density of the clouds and dust plumes that enshrouded it had diminished, putting the fear of losing sight of the tower at an almost non-existent level. Of course, this would no longer be the case during the sand time, when the sand wind grew stronger, but now that he had conquered it once before and knew of the warping of space within the sand time that led to the tower, he had rather looked forward to its arrival. Beatrice, even within that sand wind, he contributed greatly by keeping vigilant watch over the surroundings of the dragon carriage and avoiding the rocks and valleys, and yet, Garfield is still far too upset, I suppose, Subaru, that we could preemptively prevent a crisis, that surely was thanks to his efforts. Well, perhaps what Garfield needs to work on in the future is him feeling like he hasn't gotten his job done unless he uses his muscles. If one were to simply rank the contributors to overcoming the sand sea, Garfield would surely be among the top 3. Of course, one of them was Meili, and the other, Subaru. Sorry to make you keep taking these excursions with us, Patrash. Time and time again, your stamina, your ability to break through, and your grace are what come to my aid, Patrash, Dodojuan. When Subaru called out to her, Patrash neighed as if to say that it was a matter of course. Of course, in the Wallachian Empire, and once again on the way to the Pleiades watchtower, she who pulled the dragon carriage, was undoubtedly an indispensable member. The long journey was still ongoing, and there had been no time to unwind, so, once they returned to the mansion, and time could be made for some relaxation, she needed to be shown appreciation by brushing her or taking her for a picnic or whatever. And so, while Subaru and the others congratulated each other for having made it to the tower safely, getting off the dragon carriage after Subaru and the others, Al calmly looked up at the tower and muttered thus in a hoarse voice. The fleeting emotions that were blended into Al's voice, by their sheer sincerity, made Subaru's cheeks nearly stiffen, so he hastily pinched them with his fingers to endure the urge. Throughout the journey, Subaru tried his best to avoid looking too serious or worried in front of Al. The purpose of the journey was what it was. It was impossible to forget about that and act as if it was nothing special. Nevertheless, he still wanted to avoid treating Al too delicately and touching on that sore spot as much as possible. At least, that was what Subaru would have thought, had the situation been the inverse. Subaru, our objective, the Pleiades watchtower. The journey might have been a bit cramped, but I'm glad we made it. Being conscious of that, Subaru nuzzled the cheeks he had been pinching, and called out to Al. After Subaru called out to him, Al trained his gaze upon the tower. Al, the journey wasn't cramped at all. The kids took great care of me, so despite me being a burden, it was a pretty comfortable trip for me. Subaru, about you being a burden, you're not. Al, my bad, I'm not being sarcastic or ironic. It's no good. I ended up saying something unnecessary. How pathetic for a grown man to act this way. Slowly shaking his head, Al muttered as he placed his hand upon his helmeted forehead. Subaru, who could understand a portion of the difficult state of mind that Al was in, found it hard to say something appropriate. Just as Subaru was concerned about Al was also concerned about Subaru and everyone else. However, even if one were to try to pretend that they were not depressed, since the reality would be that they indeed were depressed, such a pretense would be unable to produce its intended effect. As a result, they would end up displaying a strange bravado, and a mindset of saying things that need not be spoken would come into play. Beatrice, nobody thinks that you're a pathetic man all the time. In fact, everyone has moments when they cannot hold their head high, I suppose. What is important while doing so, is reflecting upon it. In fact, Al, sheesh. That consolation really does touch me deeply. Thank you, Biko-chan, Beatrice. That manner of address, only Subaru is allowed to use it, I suppose. Be careful next time. In fact, Beatrice replied to Al with an irritated look on her face, and Subaru, feeling affectionate, gently stroked her head. Then, as he headed towards Garfield and the others who were attempting to open the main gate of the tower, Al, bro, thank you. Al's appreciative voice echoed from behind, making Subaru almost stop for a moment, but in the end, he just waved over his shoulder and proceeded towards the entrance of the tower. With Beatrice, he held various hesitations about coming to the Pleiades watchtower. Such as, if seeking Priscilla's Book of the Dead was truly the right thing to do or not. However, before considering whether or not they could actually find her Book of the Dead, he was certain of one thing, that his concerns about Al had not been meaningless. Subsequently, Petra, Subaru. This big door, how do we open it? Subaru, it's certainly huge, but it isn't as heavy as it looks. If I put all my weight into it and push with all my might, it should open up just a little. Petra, you used force. Meili, oh yes. Because it had been opened previously by Naked Oni-san and Emilia Oni-san. And then, by the Sword Saint, I had forgo 10. Beside Petra, whose eyes had widened in surprise, Meili blurted so while hugging her elbows. It was slightly surprising to hear her mention the existence known as the Sword Saint Reinhard, but apparently, during Subaru's absence, in order to gain the approval of the Council of Wise Men, Meili had visited the tower once with Felt and Reinhard. In other words, this was the third time that Meili had visited the tower in a short while. Probably, across the entire world, she was the woman foremost in the number of visits to the Pleiades watchtower, and it was likely that her count would only continue to increase in the future. Meili, Yi-P, when I came here the last time. Garfield, wait a minute. We'll talk about that, but let's get inside the tower already. If force is what you need to open it, then this is where my amazing self comes in. Then, Interrupting Meili as she tried to talk about her previous journey, Garfield cracked his knuckles and stepped forward. In response to the words by force, it was quite adorable of him to become proactive and take this as his time to shine, but in truth, Garfield was indeed fully qualified, thinking that Subaru also encouraged him with an "I'm counting on you." It happened at that moment, Garfield, his long-awaited opportunity having finally come around, Garfield had been about to challenge the door. Then, before his eyes, the sound of stone scraping against stone rang out as it slowly opened. Of course, Garfield had yet to even touch the door. Opposite to Garfield as he was astonished by that fact, out from the opened gap in the door. How about that, take you by surprise? Considering that there will likely be more people coming to the tower from here on out, as well as the cleanup of the miasma drifting over the Augria sand dunes, I have constructed a brand new mechanism. Audible was the voice of a man brimming with confidence and pride. The figure of the person to give the statement, packed with a smiling, boastful nuance, was slowly but surely exposed to the eyes of Subaru's party. Waiting there was a person with neatly trimmed green hair, clad in a black robe. Robed figure, it is a mechanism that funnels a minuscule, yet specific amount of mana through a magic circle in order to operate the door. Through such means, I have rectified the inefficient state of the tower, starting with its cumbersome gate. I have dubbed this construction the high-efficiency Sorcerous induction door. It's a door that opens automatically, so it's an automatic door. Robed figure, as the voltage of his voice increased, right before it was about to hit its apex, a cold voice interrupted like a douse of cold water, leading his vigor to fall flat on its face. His voice choking up, the robed man looked beside him in shock. As short as a child, the man pointed to the person standing next to him while trembling all over. Robed figure, Miss Flam. You should know this by now with how many times I've said it. It may be modest with its convenience, difficult to understand, but it is a brand new technology that someday ought to be used in many facilities. For this reason, an appropriate name is indispensable. Flam, but it's hard to say and hard to remember. Automatic door works fine. Robed figure, such a cheap name. Next to the man frozen up with his eyes widened, a young, peach-haired girl slowly shook her head. Greeted by two figures who were roughly the same height, the reception had seemed to leave this side a bit behind, but, setting that aside, Subaru called out with a hate to the people who had arrived here before them. Subaru, sorry for interrupting while you're in the middle of something, but you two are Meili, their Sensei-san, and Flam-chan, Oniai-san. As Subaru tried to ask about their identity, Meili interjected like so, judging the words she spoke to be sensei and the name of a girl, and based on Meili's attitude of seemingly knowing these people, he was able to guess who they were. Last time, when Meili visited the Pleiades watchtower with Felt and the others, they had left behind people at the tower to keep watch and serve as a means of communication. The Felt camps. Robed figure, MH, might that be Garfield Dono over there? Long time no see, ever since Pristella, eh? Have you been well, I wonder? It is I, Ezo Cadna. Flam, Ezo-sama is as spirited and noisy as always today. Ezo, calling me noisy is naught but slander, Miss Flam. Saying that, widening his eyes at the girl named Flam in anger, was the one who had given his name as Ezo Cadna, the rumored intellectual magician of the Felt camp. Being called by Ezo with familiarity, one might have thought that Garfield would be delighted at this reunion with an acquaintance, but, Garfield, again, my amazing self's time to shine. Gao, and, helplessly lowering his extended arm, he was in a dejected state. I see. I know not of the finer details, but Priscilla Barriella Summer has, upon hearing the news of Priscilla's demise, Ezo offered a silent prayer. His prayer, mastered to grant rest to a soul, was permeated with a hue betraying definite intellect, which could also be found in the young childlike appearance stemming from his origin as a dwarf. As a member of the Felt camp, he was of course aware of Priscilla, a rival camp, not losing his composure at the news of her passing. However, he turned his gaze towards Ezo, Dono, my condolences. I never had the opportunity to meet Priscilla Summer, but I have heard from Miss Felt that she was a formidable opponent, one not to be looked down on. Her eye for character is certain. Your liege was undoubtedly an exceptional personage, Al. Yes, I am grateful, Ezo Dono. Solemnly, Ezo displayed his condolences towards Priscilla, and Al responded in a humble manner, a stranger who hid his face behind a steel helmet, and a person who displayed maturity contrary to his young appearance, quite the unnatural exchange from the viewpoint of an outsider, but the exchange of feeling was a sincere one indeed. Ezo, well then, Natsuki Dono and Garfield Dono, have you come directly to the tower from the Empire? Subaru, yeah, that's right. The distance is shorter by going straight to the tower compared to stopping at the mansion for a bit. Ezo, I see. Be that as it may, it must have been a tough decision to part from your liege, Emilia Summer. Reinhard Dono, too, is always reluctant to part from Miss Felt, to an exasperating extent. Subaru, that's because those two have their own way of getting along, I guess. Though, I do suspect that Reinhard might actually enjoy seeing those frowns on Felt's face. Felt was so apathetic to Reinhard that it was even refreshing. Those reactions of hers perhaps seemed fresh to Reinhard, who everybody would treat with politeness at all times. If that was indeed the reason why he stayed by Felt's side, then Reinhard also had a pretty good personality. Subaru, of course, the reason's probably because she's his precious master, but, as you said, Ezo-san, it does bother me that I had to part with Emilia Tan. It's just that, nearly 2 months had passed since the time of Emilia and everyone else's departure from the kingdom for the Empire. During that period of time, nothing had progressed in regards to various issues concerned with the royal selection, and the changes in their relationship with the Empire had to be reported to the royal capital with haste. And that included the information of Priscilla's passing, which would cause a veritable earthquake as far as the royal selection was concerned. Therefore, they could not afford to delay the report to the royal capital. At the same time, they could not neglect Al, depressed as he was, for long, constraining him despite his desire to head to the tower. As Ezo had stated, it had been a tough decision. Regardless, Subaru, we didn't get into any major arguments over this. To be honest, I'm aware I was asking for too much, but they knew I was going to propose such a thing, so I feel kinda sorry. Since Emilia and the others had already known what Subaru was going to say, it felt like they had prepared the safest means to grant Subaru's request to the utmost extent. It was the utmost extent amidst aforementioned undelayable circumstances such as the report to the royal capital and the handling of the Bariel domain, but, currently, they had allowed Subaru and this group to head to the Pleiades watchtower. Ezo, no argument over it. HMHM, is that how it went? Subaru, Ezo, nothing, just talking to myself. It is very much like how you appraised the master-servant relationship between Miss Felt and Reinhard Dono, to each their own. After all, I can only imagine the things that happened in the Empire. Tracing his slim jaw with his finger, Ezo nodded in a magnanimous fashion. There was something relaxing about Ezo's manner of speech and attitude while talking to him, so it was no wonder that Meili had called him sensei. Either way, Subaru, time for a break now that we've reached the tower. Is what I'd like to do right about now, but there's probably some people who won't be able to settle down with the objective so close at hand, so, without any further delay, Ezo, onwards to the library on Taygeta. Of course, I have no reason to stop you. Only, allow me to verify one thing. Al Dono, rushing through their introductions and circumstances, Subaru looked towards the tower's entrance at the spiral staircase going up 5 floors, attempting to move the conversation forward, on towards the topic of the 3rd floor, their destination. However, he was interrupted by Ezo calling Al's name. As Al turned around in response to that call, Ezo raised a single finger, and, Ezo, earlier, I stated that I have never been acquainted with Priscilla Summer, but allow me to say this. From what I have heard of her personality, is it not unthinkable that Priscilla Summer would wish for you to read her Book of the Dead? Even so, do you still desire the book of your late liege? Al, Subaru, Ezo-san, that's, Ezo, silence, Natsuki Dono. I am asking Al Dono. It is an important matter. Right after Ezo told him to be silent, the tip of his raised finger began to glow faintly, and Subaru felt his own throat become unable to emit sound. Instantly, he guessed that it was some magic of Ezo's, and was made aware that he was a user of magic proficient beyond his expectations, and thus, with Subaru having been forbidden from speaking by force to their side, Ezo exchanged gazes with Al. Ezo, it is painful to lose somebody close to you. I, and many others, share in this experience. However, it is unthinkable that all those who experience it would then visit this tower, seeking a book of the dead. Much less, if the person inscribed within the book would not desire that either. That which Ezo spoke was a sensible opinion so sharp that it could even draw blood. As Al maintained silence, his expression was hidden by his steel helmet, making it impossible to examine it. However, it was factual that he had sustained a deep, monumental wound, that he was drowning in the blood and pain wrought by that wound. It was also a fact that Subaru, and everybody else, wanted to do something about that. For that, the Emilia camp had unanimously, Al, it's as you say, Ezo Dono. As you said, there are people who, even if somebody close to them dies, will get back up on their feet by themselves. Even without borrowing the power of the books, Ezo, your agreement is above all else. However, it seems you have more to say. Al, yeah, I've got more. There's another thing that's just as you said. Princess Priscilla, she wouldn't want anybody to read her Book of the Dead. Ezo, Al, but, she died. With a hum, Subaru's muted throat rang faintly. Hearing Al speak of Priscilla's passing for the first time, Subaru felt a sensation akin to being cut by a sharp blade. It was beyond pain, it was a sensation moreso akin to bloodshedding, causing his body temperature to fall vigorously. Then, with Subaru and Ezo having heard those words, Al still continued further. Al, Priscilla is dead. No longer. Can she tell me anything, Ezo? I see. At that low tone hailing from Al, sounding as if his heart had frozen over, Ezo cast his eyes down. Listening to the very same reply Ezo did, Subaru's heart was pierced by the everlasting glaciation that had befallen Al's heart at the pitiful, desolate frame of mind upon being bereaved of the flame, of the sun known as Priscilla, his expression indicating he was experience a sensation selfsame with that of Subaru's. Ezo gave a brief sigh, and, Ezo, by saying things to test you, I have made you say something you wished not to. I apologize, Al, nah, it was necessary for me to put it into words. Indeed, as Al responded in a hoarse voice, Ezo deeply nodded. Then, Ezo snapped his fingers, and, Ezo, excuse me, Natsuki Dono. I wished to hear him out between just the two of us, without any interruptions. Subaru, my voice is back. Just now, that was, Ezo, yin magic. Is what it may seem, but it is an application of yang magic. It is not that you had lost your voice, but rather that it was boosted to a pitch so high that nobody would be able to hear it normally. It is in the register emitted by the likes of bats. Subaru, is that even possible? I really underestimated you. That and, while placing his hand upon his throat, Subaru turned his attention towards Al. Guessing the intention of Subaru's gaze, Ezo prefaced with I understand, Ezo, ultimately, it is a matter between the parties involved. It is no place for outsiders to interject. But then again, were doubt or hesitation present, it was within my intentions to stop him indirectly. But presuming this is the only way to move forward, then those who bear the resolve have no choice but to do so. Subaru, is that fine? Ezo, do not say such ridiculous things. All of you have come to terms with it in your own ways, no? Besides, if I myself died, I would like for people to read my Book of the Dead if they so desired. I would want them to learn everything about my life, and use it as a foundation for the future. Subaru, Ezo, or rather, while it may not have been in the form of earnest desire, I have already diligently read quite a few books of the dead. They would have undoubtedly questioned how I could stoop so low. The orderly, mature expression Ezo had worn until then disappeared as he raised his voice, his expression having returned to the one he had initially displayed when exhibiting the automatic door technology that opened the door of the tower, bearing great confidence. While astonished by the sudden change in demeanor, Subaru understood that this was a bit of ingenuity designed to distract from the tense atmosphere Ezo had created, and thus harbored a favorable impression of Ezo's humanity. In all honesty, having just returned from the Empire, Where everyone he met had the potential to become an enemy, Subaru was highly favorable to those he could face with peace of mind. In any case, Ezo, sorry for keeping you. I feel bad for taking stocks away from Natsuki Dono and the rest, who are already familiar with the tower, but likely at the current moment, I am the one who has visited the library the most, and so I shall be guiding you myself. Towards the main attraction of the Great Library Pleiades, Taygeta, where the books of the dead are stored. With that, the time to fulfill their objective in visiting the Pleiades watchtower had finally come around.